Rupert Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of us, including myself, spoke in this House against the ill-judged appointment of Peter Mandelson, which flew in the face of logic, given his poor relationship with the US and his history of misfeasance in public office. Yep. Will the Minister undertake to obtain all redacted evidence from the US pertaining to all UK persons in positions of influence referred to in the Epstein documents and expose them to the public? This is the only way to clear up this global scandal for the UK electorate.
Chief Secretary.
Where the government has jurisdiction over documents and in compliance with the humble address, we will publish them, as I've said to the House earlier today.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I think it's notable, Madam Deputy Speaker, that despite the government's huge majority, I think they've run out of people to stand up and defend their position. Now, the Minister is, and I'm not being patronising, the Minister is a very intelligent man. Therefore, I ask of him that he does not insult the intelligence of the rest of us when he talks about the Prime Minister having believed Mandelson's lies after he asked him questions. We now know from the forensic questioning by the Leader of the Opposition that the Prime Minister knew that the relationship between Mandelson and Epstein carried on, ongoing was the word, after his being jailed for paedophilia and prostitution-related offences. He apparently chose to ask for more questions after that and was lied to. What more did he need to know before knowing that this man should never be allowed within miles of the American post as our ambassador?
Secretary.
My honourable friend will, in due course, see papers disclosed in compliance with the humble address, which will be very clear in showing the questions that were asked to Peter Mandelson and the lies that Peter Mandelson responded with in answering the Prime Minister's questions.
Esther McMahon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the importance of standards in public life, why is it that the advisor who suggested Peter Mandelson as the ambassador to the US has had to resign, but the person who actually appointed Peter Mandelson, that is the Prime Minister, is still in post?
Chief Secretary.
As the Prime Minister said last Thursday, he has apologised for having appointed Peter Mandelson, and had the information that is now available had been available at the time of his appointment, he wouldn't have appointed him in the first place.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We all know that the Prime Minister is a lawyer, and one of the traits of a lawyer is to understand and test the veracity of information that is being provided. We know that the Prime Minister has said from that dispatch box that he took a risk and that he had known that Mandelson kept his relationship with Epstein. The real question is that I suspect the risk was that the public wouldn't find out. The public do now know. Is it not time for the Prime Minister to simply go?
Secretary.
No.
Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is insulting. The first time, though it was not to be the last time, that Peter Mandelson resigned in disgrace from a Labour government, then Tony Blair's cabinet, I was 7 years old. Is the Minister seriously telling us that our Prime Minister needs tweaks to process to know not to hire somebody who has been a nationally notorious crook for over 25 years?
Secretary.
As the Honourable Lady will have heard, if the Prime Minister had access to the information we now have about the depth and extent of the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson, he would have not been appointed in the first place.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Deputy Speaker, the Minister has managed to throw out more chaff than a B-52. Can I ask him, in his remarks about security vetting, whether he means developed vetting of the sort that is applied to very senior officials before they are appointed to extremely sensitive positions, including military individuals, or whether he has something else in mind? Will he say whether that will be repeated periodically, as is the case for officials? And will it be applied both to political appointees and also ministerial appointments, as say appointments as ministers, where those positions are particularly sensitive?
Secretary.
I think the honourable member knows, Madam Deputy Speaker, that there's different processes in relation to the different types of roles that we might have and others in government, from due diligence through to develop national security vetting, as he sets out. The important point is that the right processes apply to the right person at the right time, and that is what we're reviewing right now.
Pete Wishart.
Deputy Speaker, the only statement that my constituents want today is a resignation statement. The only reform they want is the reform that takes this Prime Minister out of 10 Downing Street. It doesn't matter how many reviews, inquiries or fireguards they put in the way. He has lost the confidence and trust of the British people. What we need is a government that will end this chaos. They promised to end this chaos when they came to power. Instead, it is through the stratosphere. He knows, everybody in this House knows, everybody in this country knows, he is toast. Why don't they just get on with it and get rid of him?
Secretary.
The honourable gentleman seems to be wishing for more chaos in our country. The public voted to end that at the last general election, and that's why this government's getting on for delivering change for people across the country.
Wendy Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today's statement is actually little more than a smoke screen, an attempt to detract away from the key issue, which is about Peter Mandelson and our Prime Minister. There are more questions being asked and still no answers. I'd like to take the Minister very briefly back to that central point about a golden goodbye for Peter Mandelson. How much?
Secretary.
I refer the right honourable lady to my previous answer.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Of course, we do need to have a Commissioner who has got the powers and abilities to expose where there's been corruption and to deal with it. But this statement today is not required, because we already know that a bad judgment has been made by the Prime Minister, and really what the public want to know is how is he going to be held to account for things which he already knew and ignored. But can the Minister give us an assurance then looking at extra powers for commissioners will not go as far as what has happened in Northern Ireland, where the discredited former Standards Commissioner has used her powers to silence members of the Assembly for too vigorously questioning ministers or not showing enough empathy when they make public statements about security situations in their own constituency, and especially since some of the members sitting behind me, when their heckling fails, now threaten members by reporting to the Standards Commissioner to try and silence him that way.
Chief Secretary.
I think it's important, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we take good practice wherever it exists and learn the lessons where reforms have not worked, whether in our Parliament or in other devolved governments across the United Kingdom. And the honourable gentleman is encouraged to write to me with his examples in more detail to ensure that we avoid that in the future. I can assure him that the government has no intention to want to try to limit the voices of people in this House or indeed anywhere else.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Going back to the process the Prime Minister followed, he received information from the vetting and security services that Peter Mandelson might have had an ongoing relationship. He then questioned Peter Mandelson about that. Did he then test those answers that Peter Mandelson gave with that security and vetting service? Because if he did not, it can only mean one of two things. Either he has a dereliction of duty or he's a credulous fool. Either way, he should resign, shouldn't he?
Chief Secretary.
No.
Jim Allister.
Thank you. Can I take the House back to where this debate started? It began with the shadow spokesman reminding us that advisers advise and ministers decide. And in the back of that, I want to give the Minister the opportunity, I think for the fourth time in this debate, to answer the fairly fundamental question that I'd like to know the answer to and my constituents would like to know the answer to. If it is right for an adviser to resign, why not the far more culpable decision maker?
Chief Secretary.
As the Prime Minister has made clear, he apologised for appointing Peter Mandelson to the position of Ambassador, and had the information which is now available been available at the point of his appointment, he would never have appointed Peter Mandelson in the first place.
Dr Luke Evans.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for his statement about the new rules and legislation that he's bringing forward. I've missed something, though. Could he point to the one that he's bringing forward that would stop a Prime Minister from appointing a twice-sacked best friend of the world's greatest paedophile?
Chief Secretary.
I refer him to the detail of my statement.
To John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I tell the Chief Secretary in relation to his previous answer that the Foreign Affairs Committee repeatedly asked for Lord Mandelson to appear. He refused to come. But what the Foreign Affairs Committee did hear was from the Permanent Under-Secretary that Lord Mandelson would be entitled to a payoff in relation to the terms of his contract. So can the Chief Secretary say how much he received and whether or not he will be asked to repay it?
The Foreign Office is currently reviewing the terms of the contract that led to the suggestion of severance payments when Peter Mandelson was sacked and is due to update the House in due course.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement? It is refreshing to see a government that's committed to making those in positions of trust accountable. They're clearly very angry today. And maybe it's because it's in marked contrast to a record of people who voted to cover up for one of their friends. But may I say, for ordinary people in Bishop Auckland, the crimes of Epstein are truly shocking and disgusting, and they're shocked to see this global web of power and people acting with such complete impunity. So is the government, in addition to looking at improved vetting, looking at how we have improved surveillance and vetting of those who are in a position of trust to make sure that these sorts of things cannot happen by those who are entrusted?
Chief Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As he will have heard in my statement today, there are a number of avenues that the government is pursuing, including the potential for more routine annual disclosure of financial and commercial interests that we hope will shed more light on some of these issues where individuals are getting away with breaking the rules.
Sir Bernard Jenkins.
Madam Deputy Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister's adviser Morgan McSweeney resigned because he had advised the Prime Minister to make this appointment. What advice did the National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell give to the Prime Minister? And if he did give the same advice, shouldn't he resign as well?
Chief Secretary.
The honourable member will know that it would not be appropriate for me to speak on behalf of civil servants and special advisers from the dispatch box. The statements released by Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer yesterday answer his questions in relation to Morgan McSweeney's decision to resign from post.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Further to the point that my right honourable friend from Chingford and Woodford Green made, this does look like smoke today. It really does. I mean, this horse has bolted so far, it's at Wetherby Racecourse. And I have to say to the honourable gentleman that he really is not giving the answers that we need to hear. So let me ask the right honourable gentleman. He said that what goes to the heart of the Prime Minister is what he's trying to do. So why did the Prime Minister believe that somebody who took loans which in today's money would be worth over £1 million was found to be flogging passports? Why did the Prime Minister ever think that that person should be rewarded?
Chief Secretary.
On the first part of the honourable gentleman's question, I would just remind him that the reforms that this government has made in the past 18 years and those which we're talking about today will be the most wide-ranging reforms to standards in public life that we've seen for a very, very long time indeed. I wouldn't call that smoke and mirrors, I'd call that progress. On the second part of his question, as I've said repeatedly to the House, if the Prime Minister had known the depth and extent of the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, then he wouldn't have been appointed in the first place. And it's easy for members on the opposite benches with the benefits of hindsight and now with access to the documents that were not available to the Prime Minister at the time of appointment to say that it should have been done otherwise.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't doubt the right honourable gentleman's desire to put things right. What I slightly doubt today is that right now, today, when everything is about the Prime Minister's judgment, that this looks a lot like smoke to me. This is right, but not right now. And the point I simply say to him is that the point about Mandelson is that all of this stuff was actually known in conversation discussion. He was sacked twice for impropriety in government office. He actually ended up in Deripaska's yacht when the EU was discussing taxation on aluminium, improper again, and all this stuff leads to the final question of why him. Then, of course, the vetting was not good enough, but it could have been had they bothered to check everything. And I simply say to the honourable gentleman, there is a big question to be asked here, as my honourable gent said. Surely this is ultimately about the Prime Minister's judgment in overruling anything that he found and deciding for his own purposes that this man should have been appointed to ambassador.
Chief Secretary.
The right honourable gentleman will know that the Prime Minister apologised last Thursday for having appointed Peter Mandelson to the post. As he said repeatedly, had he seen the information that we are now all able to see from the release of documents from the US Department for Justice, which showed the level of corruption, but also the deep and extensive relationship that existed between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, on which Peter Mandelson lied to the Prime Minister about at the point of his appointment, he would never have appointed him in the first place.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for his statement. My biggest concern, the biggest concern of my constituents, is that the impact of behaviour like Peter Mandelson's undermines trust in our politics and in our democracy, because quite frankly, all parties in this House have had scandals related to someone in their party. It gives us all a bad name. So can I ask, from the bottom of my heart, can this government get a grip of it and end the sleaze and scandal culture that has engulfed all of our politics, all of our parties, so that I can go back to my constituents and say, no, we're not all the same?
Chief Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As I said in my statement, the vast majority of members of this House, but also civil servants and other political appointments in the other place, come into politics to serve the public, not to serve themselves. But what the Peter Mandelson issue has shown is that for all of the rules that we have in place that work for the majority of people doing the right thing, there have still been loopholes for people who want to do the wrong thing, and those are the loopholes that we're now going to close.
Stephen Gethins.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Minister for his statement today? It was clearly preferable being here than in the reception that the Prime Minister is hosting for Scottish Labour MPs and MSPs later on. I've lost count of the amount of time that I've spent here dealing with one way or another Westminster chaos. And it often relates to members of the House of Lords who are there for life, be they Labour, Liberal or Conservative. This statement's tinkering. When will they commit to what they've committed to for 115 years and dealing with the obscenity that is the House of Lords?
The honourable member will know that the government's committed to working with peers in the other place to modernise the House of Lords, and that we agree that that needs to happen. That's why we're in the process of removing hereditary peers and why we're working with the authorities in the other place to make sure that we deal with the issues we're talking about today.
Chair of the Standards Committee, Alberto Costa.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I never make comment about any conduct or standards issues that may impact on individual MPs precisely because of my adjudicatory role in the Committee on Standards, and I don't propose to refer to the Prime Minister in respect of the potential that if not all documents are disclosed to the House, it might be a breach of privilege. But I do want to just say gently to the Minister this, that when he constantly refers to the past and to my party in government's role with breaches of the standards issues, from this moment on, will he accept that given the litany of issues that have befallen the Labour government, as outlined by my honourable friend at the dispatch box, that it would really behove him if he stopped doing that and just ensured that going forward the Labour government acts with the same standards of conduct that it demanded of my party in government? And might he request the Prime Minister, given the statements that he's made here today, to attend a meeting with the Committee on Standards to outline exactly how, moving forward, the Prime Minister will uphold the highest of standards?
Chief Secretary.
On the first part of his question, Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree that we need to ensure that we have a standard system both in this place and the other place that meets the challenges we're talking about today. That is not a party political issue. I merely make reference to the performance of the last government, given the chuntering that we've had from the benches opposite when I was talking about the reforms we're bringing forward to ensure justice for victims and appropriate powers to tackle corruption in the future. On the second part of his question, I'm sure that if he writes to the Prime Minister's office will engage with him and his committee on his invitation.
I call Polly Billington, followed by Steve Darling. Polly Billington.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it's worth reminding my honourable friend that one of the things that people keep going back to is that the decision was made that this appointment was worth the risk. And what we finally found out was that some people decided that the rules didn't apply to them. considering how important tackling violence against women and girls is to this government and to this Prime Minister, could the honourable gentleman agree to meet with women backbenchers in particular to discuss the possibility of exploring further how we tackle misogyny in public life?
Secretary.
I would be very happy to meet with my honourable friend and colleagues and to do anything I can in pursuit of that outcome.
Neil O'Brien, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's authority is gone and his government is starting to collapse. But the PM's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson raises massive questions about standards in public life, questions which the Minister's statement today just doesn't answer. Mr. Speaker, advisers advise, but ministers decide. And on that basis, can the Minister explain why it was right for Morgan McSweeney to resign, but not right for the Prime Minister to resign? Morgan McSweeney might have provided the advice, but it was the Prime Minister who made the decision to appoint the best friend of the world's most notorious paedophile to be His Majesty's ambassador in Washington. And the PM did this despite knowing that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house while he was in jail for child prostitution. The problem is not the structures or the processes. The information was there. The warnings were there. The problem is that the Prime Minister had all of that before him and yet chose to ignore it. He cannot keep blaming others. He cannot blame the process. He must start taking personal responsibility. For the record of this government on standards is truly extraordinary. First, the Prime Minister was embroiled in the freebies scandal. £107,000 in gifts given to him since 2019 and a personal donor being given a Downing Street pass. Then the Prime Minister was reprimanded by his own ethics advisor over the appointment of a non-disclosed Labour donor to be the football regulator. His Transport Secretary, an ex-cop, had to resign over misleading the police. His anti-corruption minister had to resign over corruption. His homelessness minister had to resign for making people homeless. And then his deputy prime minister, housing minister, had to resign over a £40,000 unpaid tax bill on her house. No wonder even the leader of the Scottish Labour Party now says that the PM must go. Mr. Sarwar says, and I quote, "There have been too many mistakes and that he has no choice but to be honest about failure where I see it." He is right. Now let me turn to some specific questions. First, can the Minister confirm whether Peter Mandelson received a golden goodbye severance payment signed off by the government? Why has the government refused to answer this question since September? It's been reported that the golden goodbye was between £39,000 and £55,000, more than the average person earns in a year, Mr. Speaker. This is grotesque. And what steps is the government taking to retrieve this incredible payment for resigning in disgrace? It sounded from the Minister like he was saying he couldn't do it. I have to remind the Minister, at the moment at least, they are actually the government. They can take action. Second, will the government agree to a full investigation into Peter Mandelson's behaviour while he was our ambassador? On 27th of February, Mandelson arranged for the Prime Minister to meet Palantir, a client of Global Counsel, his own company. It was not recorded in the Prime Minister's register of meetings. It only emerged later. Palantir were then directly awarded a £240 million contract by the government. I make no criticism of Palantir. My point is simply, why wasn't it recorded? How many more such lobbyist meetings with the PM were there? And what other inside information was being shared? Will he agree, yes or no, to a full inquiry into Mandelson's time as our ambassador? Third, let me ask about another New Labour veteran put forward for a public office despite his known association with a paedophile. Number 10 have said that they investigated Matthew Doyle's relationship with a convicted paedophile, Sean Morton. Number 10 gave Doyle, the PM's former Director of Communications, a peerage after purportedly examining this matter. But they have never clarified whether their relationship continued after Morton's conviction. If Doyle cut ties with Morton upon his conviction, why doesn't the government just say so? So I asked the Chief Secretary to clarify this, and will he agree to publish all the documents relating to that appointment? Fourth, the Chief Secretary told the House on the 2nd of February that a review of the decision to appoint Mandelson was underway. What form will it take? Will a statement be laid before Parliament? When? Will Mandelson be interviewed as part of that review? Will it include the potential involvement of hostile intelligence services? And finally, has the government substantively responded to the ISC's request for more resourcing so it can do its job properly in reviewing the papers that are about to be released? Mr. Speaker, No amount of process or fiddling about with procedures can compensate for a Prime Minister who lacked the judgment to act on information put before him. The Prime Minister was warned about Mandelson. He knew, but he decided it was a risk worth taking. And as the leader of the Scottish Labour Party pointed out today, it's not just the Mandelson affair. Time and time again, the Prime Minister gets it wrong, from the winter fuel payment to the family farm tax. And just like with the grooming gangs inquiry, the PM has once again put his own political interest ahead of the interests of victims. Mr. Speaker, at the start of his statement, the Minister says the PM's choices in this case go to the heart of who he is. And that is what we are worried about, Mr. Speaker. The PM's head of communications has resigned. The PM's chief of staff has resigned. The leader of the Scottish Labour Party says the Prime Minister should resign. It seems like more and more people, even in the Labour Party, are now coming to the same conclusion as the public. This country deserves better.
Minister Durham-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll remind the honourable gentleman that the public had their say at the last general election and elected a landslide Labour majority and put the party opposite into a historic defeat. And might I say that one of the reasons, in my view, Mr. Speaker, that the public booted that lot out of office was because of the repeated failings in standards and ethics, from the PPE contracts to dodgy friends to lying to Parliament to the sex misconduct scandals. And he says to me, why is it that ministers that have breached the code have resigned? Because we fixed the system. The reason we have an independent ethics advisor who can't be directed by the Prime Minister, as was the case under the previous party, is because it is independent. And when ministers have been found to break the code, they have gone, because that should be the consequence for doing so. The honourable member has asked me about what the Prime Minister knew at the time of Peter Mandelson's appointment. The Prime Minister has answered this question repeatedly, Mr. Speaker. The information that has come out since his appointment has made it clear that Peter lied to the Prime Minister about the state of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And had the Prime Minister have known then, at the point of appointment, what we all know now, with the privilege of hindsight, he would not have appointed him in the first place. He asked me a number of questions about the process, I think, which flow from the humble address. As I've already informed the House, Mr. Speaker, the government is working with the leadership of the Intelligence and Security Committee to ensure that we can comply with the humble address and cooperate with transparency to release the documents in the way that we have said we will, in compliance with the Met Police investigation and other constraints which are currently being managed. And we will ensure that the Intelligence and Security Committee is given all the available support it needs to be able to service the House effectively in line with the humble address.